Welcome into a special bonus edition of Check the Mike. Steve Palazzolo here with Mike Renner. Just a special Mike Renner edition. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great. This is Christmas weekend, not Christmas Day. People call it Christmas Day Thursday. It's Christmas weekend.
It's Christmas weekend, and your birthday's coming up usually, right? This is early, so
Tomorrow?
You can celebrate tomorrow. Okay,
yeah. It's almost.
happy
I think
birthday.
the last 3 years it's fallen. My birthday's fallen out of the draft, but today it's the day after. So very, very much needed celebration post this one.
Yeah, this is great, man. This is, for those who don't know our history, both of us via PFF historically. Now look at you at CBS. You get your own shows on TV and everything. I'm here, Check the Mike, under the 33rd team. I know there were some questions about that. 33rd team, Check the Mike. But Mike, you and I, we used to cover the draft together. We spent a lot of draft nights together, even on your birthday, evaluating what teams did on draft weekend. So it's always good to catch up with you.
That one birthday where I brought in the case of Coors Light and Neil wanted to kill me.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one.
He's like, come on, Mike, you're working. This isn't birthday night. You got to work here. Get on air. Let's go. So I've been in my little echo chamber with Sam. We kind of see a lot of the things the same way. So tell me about the draft. What do you like? What do you don't like? What are the surprises? Just talk draft. Unload all your takes for me, man.
Gosh. I mean, I think everyone wants to talk about Shedeur, right? And so I guess I'll start there.
Do it.
He was not in my top 50. He was,
really?
A guy I would have taken middle of day two. But like middle of day two, just historically, you go back to like the 2022 class. There was a lot of middle of day two quarterbacks. And I think only Malik and Pickett and Ritter, right, went before the end of day two. So it's like it's just not a position that gets drafted on day two because it's so dichotomous. So if you kind of alienated all the teams that could have drafted you in your interviews because you wanted to go number one, then this is what happens, I think. Yeah. So obviously everyone's like a little surprised just given the tape, but like if you just put all of it together, this is not necessarily surprising in retrospect. So there's that. I do think it's interesting that, we've been saying it's an incredible running back class. I think a lot of teams noticed that. We only saw 6 come off the board. I even had more than that in my top 100.
Yeah.
So like, this is the first time I think I've had more players, but that's, I think, a lot of teams recognizing that, hey, we're going to get one in the fourth. And just looking at the board, you tweeted about Cam Skadaboo. I've been banging the table for Dylan Sampson, the Tennessee running back. It's like there are going to be probably 10 guys come off the board in this running back class in the fourth round. I think everyone's kind of saying this was where we're going to get one. I think a lot of teams are going to come get one. So there's that. I'm trying to think of any other takes I have.
Really quick. Really quick. Sam and I have been theorizing that the NFL is, quote, a little bit better at drafting generally. Like when I look around the league, there's not a whole lot of drafts that I don't like or teams that seem like they're just working off their own board completely separately. That's the sense I've felt the last couple drafts. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like the league is kind of a little more homogenized and closer to the consensus in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I think there's just better information out there in terms of where guys are going to go. Yeah. So you don't see your off the wall second rounder.
Yeah.
Because, one team had a second, like a, top 50 grade on him and no one else did.
Belichick's not drafting anymore. So you don't have Bill grabbing a random safety in round 2. That's what it is.
Well, that was kind of, the old school way was to really be siloed in terms of like, we do our evaluations, don't listen to any outside noise. Now I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't listen to any outside noise because there is so many voices in the space now and just so much information that, a lot of teams track that. Like a lot of teams have people that are on top of that, just, making sure they know the ranges of where guys are going to come off the board. So, yeah, I think I agree with that. Obviously, in third round, that's when it started to get, some players who may have been
always
a little bit more off the wall. But I think my last take is that I think you saw the Eagles model of drafting really wave through the NFL in the first round. Like a cornerback doesn't come off the board till 20, all trenches. And it's not necessarily that it wasn't a great offensive line class. It's just everyone prioritizing that position. When Gray Zabel's a top 20 guy, when Tyler Booker's a number 12 overall guy, it's like, I think a lot of teams are saying, why not just make those investments. We could chase other positions. We could chase guys who maybe would have higher grades on, but we just have this almost, I don't want to say certainty, but knowledge of the floor you're getting with a lot of these O-linemen.
It's an interesting one because, the guards going high. And there's, again, you mentioned there's a lot of good information around the NFL, a lot more information around the NFL. And a lot more teams are looking at surplus value and what they're like, because they're static contracts for every player, right? You're going to play. So the Cowboys were debating Tyler Booker or Walter Nolan. That was the report at 12. They're going to make the same salary no matter what. But Booker's going to be the 17th paid guard if you take him. And Nolan's going to be like 55th. Among defensive tackles. It doesn't seem like teams focused on that as much, but just get the trenches, just get the guards, just get the offensive line, and that's the Eagles' perception. But I think the money thing is next, where teams are going to start saying, okay, edges and D tackle, like 5 D tackles off the board. That's the most since 2019. I think some teams are trending in that, saying we want this surplus value, we want these valuable positions in the first round as well, and it's usually the trench guys.
But I do think also offensive line uniquely has a longer career length than pretty much every other position outside of quarterback, right? So if you draft no lineman, your useful shelf life is so much more than like a running back, but definitely more than cornerbacks, interior defensive tackles, other positions on the NFL football field.
Any teams that you really like here, Renner? Which teams are mopping up, getting all your favorite players? What draft haul are we liking here through 2 days?
I mean, the Ravens is an easy answer. They do it every single year. I mean, since Eric DeCosta took over, not to trash Ozzie Newsome is a legend, but like Eric DeCosta's track record is second to none in the NFL. He just, every single year, we talk about Howie and like him, taking the low hanging fruit. DeCosta's been the exact same. It's just like, and Malachi Starks, Mike Green, that guy as 10th and 16th overall players on my draft board. It's like to get that in your first, second round when you didn't have a pick till 27th. Whew, they just got good players and like high floor players, in my opinion, too. And so I loved their haul. I love the Bucks haul too.
Yeah.
Just because it went against the grain. I think I talked about this on the Bleacher Report show Thursday night, that if you would have mocked Emeka Egbuka to the Bucks,
everybody would have been so mad at you.
Bucks fans would have wanted to murder you.
Have you seen our depth chart, Mike? Have you seen we have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and we just drafted Jalen McMillan? Have you seen it?
And if you also told them you're going to draft 2 corners in the top 100, it would be like, we don't need 2 corners.
Right.
But why not when they're that good, in my opinion? Benjamin Morrison, I had I think 26th on my board. Jacob Parrish, I think I had 51st on my board. So they got 2 great players at the cornerback position. And I think Parrish has a little more versatility than Morrison, but they're both just good. So I love what they did just because it didn't necessarily attack the quote unquote needs, but it attacked value.
I have a soft spot for teams that don't fill needs with picks. Even if they don't pick the right player, I just love it. I just love that they're not trying to fill out the depth chart, because I do think over time that's better. This feels like 2 straight drafts for the Bucks where they just got good, dependable football player, one after another. Their first 4 picks last year, their first 3 picks this year. I think that's going to add up for them. Nothing overly sexy. Like Egbuka is just a good, solid, all-around receiver. He's going to produce. And whether it's this year or when Chris Godwin gets older and injured again, they're all going to produce. I think they've done a nice job the last couple of years.
Other team, Cleveland Browns. I had to give a shout out to them because I love Dylan Gabriel. My grade on him was not dissimilar than Shedeur's. And people were talking about them drafting Shedeur at number 2 overall, right? So for them to go 2 to 5, get the haul they got. And I love Mason Graham's tape. It's Travis Hunter is awesome. I'm not going to say that I have Mason Graham higher than Travis Hunter, but I think Mason Graham can be a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL. Like his second contract could very well be comparable to Travis Hunter's second contract. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, given what I saw from him in college. And people like roast that he's, bad body or whatever. Pete Prisco here at CBS harps on it. It's like he's got a soft face or whatever. I'm like, if his tape from last year was him fat and not in shape or whatever, and that he can get more in shape, that's like almost a selling point to me that he's got a bad body right now. That
I'm
he
so
can,
mad.
you know.
What happened to Pete? He was about a month ago. He was tweeting out Mason Graham could be the best player in the draft. I sent him a DM. I was like, Pete and I think we were both watching Graham tape like within the 2 days of each other. I'm like, man, I came to the same conclusion. I love him. Pete's like, yeah, good eyes. And now he's over there like he's calling him bad face and fat now. Come on, Pete.
I gotta find that tweet and I gotta rub it
it's
in
out
his
there,
face
yeah.
because,
No, somebody. Right. I think somebody called him on it recently, and he's like, "Oh, I got more information." And if the more information is just like fat face,
Tony Baselli got in his ear.
Tony did.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're buddies.
Yeah. So I love that. Now they're top of the second round picks, whatever, linebacker, running back. I think they're both exceptional players, but I think they missed the boat a little bit there in value. But then I love Harold Fannin too. I think as a tight end too, and I love where he went because like he's not going to unseat Njoku, but they still have 2 tight end, and he's the perfect tight end too. I mean, just so dynamic. If you forget about him, he can be a big play waiting to happen. So I really like their draft.
Explain Dylan Gabriel because I didn't because you pointed him out to me before I really dove into the tape, and then I kind of really liked the tape as well. I put him at QB4, and I think everybody darting on was kind of developmental like this, right? Yeah. And so I didn't realize the other people in our community were making fun of this pick. I thought it was fine. I was like, I'd take Gabriel in round 3, and people were making fun of it, Mike. So defend our Dylan Gabriel love here.
So, I mean, he's played a ton of football, and not just a ton, literally more than any other player has ever played entering the NFL at the quarterback position, because he was, high volume passing offense in high school for 4 years as a starter, 63 career starts in college, more than anyone else in college football history. So he's experienced, and I think you see it on tape. Outside of like all, the numbers or whatever, I think he has good arm talent. Maybe not off-platform stuff. You don't see the arm angle and whatnot from him, but when he wants to drive it down the football field, he can really spin it. And I love his mechanics too. You see really sound play after play. You don't see a lot of duds on his tape in terms of just like bad balls, which I like to see because I think that only gets amplified once you get to the NFL. When it's like a touch bigger ball, you see guys who don't have great mechanics. The spirals are sort of like your ugly misses only get amplified at that level. And then he's just like so calm. I met this guy at the combine, talked with him. If you've seen any of his interviews, he's got like a different energy to him that guys gravitate towards. Like he's going to be ingratiate himself into a locker room very quickly, kind of very much, anti a lot of things that have been said about Shedeur Sanders in that regard. And he even said, he's like, I went to Oregon, showed up driving a white minivan. He's like, because what would it have looked like if I showed up in a Lamborghini, never having played it down a football. So I think he can succeed at the NFL level, not the elite. That's why he's getting drafted in the 3rd round, right. But he can be a Brock Purdy. He can handle the NFL rigors. He can handle tight pockets. He can escape that. And he's a plus athlete, man. You watch his tape. I think that gets underrated is that I think he's a better pure scrambler than maybe anyone but Jackson Dart of the top guy. I guess Jalen Milroe put him. I always forget about him in the quarterback class, but I think he's world. I think he's right up. I think he's better than his athleticism in space is better than guys like Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. So
did you like? I mean, because I mentioned this last night. I watched Gabriel right after Shedeur and Dart. I thought Dart was a good runner, but not an athletic. He wasn't athletic in the pocket to me. I thought him and Shedeur
I agree with that.
Right. They both struggled avoiding the rush. And then I saw Gabriel going first, second, third read, and then he took off when he wanted to, and he broke the pocket when he wanted to, where Shedeur and Dart struggled with that. I thought his pocket athleticism really stood out to me.
Yeah, he finds creases to escape from. And you've seen it the last 2 years. His pressure sack conversion ratio has been great, and that's at 2 different stops, right? Oklahoma didn't have, Oregon had a good offensive line. Oklahoma, not as much there that last year. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think he can handle playing quarterback in the NFL. And watching guys in this class, there weren't many where I felt great saying that. So that's why he ended up where he did for me.
That Browns-Jags trade, I've been pretty vocal about. For the Browns, it felt like a necessary reset given the Deshaun Watson chains of the contract and the missed draft pick. So I was excited about it from a Browns perspective. What about from a Jags perspective, trading up for Travis Hunter? Is this a true win-win as far as the trade goes?
I think it is. I really like it from even the Jags perspective, because for the same reasons I love, the Bengals re-signing T. Higgins when it was like close to the cap. It's like, if you have that trio, guess what? You have a great offense, and you're still in the, fan business. You're still trying to sell tickets. And yeah, you're trying to win championships. And obviously I think this gives you a good chance to win championships, but you have a fan base that every single year now is going to be excited to come watch your football team, because what can happen when you have Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter with Trevor Lawrence throwing the football, right? It's like, that is just exciting. And it's an offense that if you're down 20 can come back and win a game still. And you're never really out of games with that caliber of talent at the receiver position and quarterback position. And it's just something that Trevor never had over the course of his career. Never had close to it. So it's like a night and day. Like, if you really want to find out where his ceiling can push, we're going to find out very shortly here.
We're heading into year
Hunter,
5. Really quick, year 5 for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's been fine. Obviously hasn't lived up to this generational type of hype that he was getting, but is this the thing to push him over the top?
Exactly. And so, and I do think Hunter is, I don't think he's quite Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harris Jr.'s prospects, but like, I would have had him over Rome as a wide receiver last year. So like, he's that good of a wide receiver. And then the fact that like, you never really saw him at 100% on his tape is just even like scarier. Where can the ceiling push? And I do think you play a little both ways, but I think that's a little overblown in terms of the value proposition, but maybe like red zone on defense. But I think he's wide receiver first, and just a guy you want in your locker room to start change the culture. The Gladstone monologue was a little over the top, I think, but he touched on some good points in that, in the stars and scrubs model, when you have guys who are true stars and true high character stars, they raise your football team. They raise other guys in your football team up as well.
That's a good. So Sam and I were discussing the other part of what Gladstone said, where people were calling it hubris, where he said, "I'm uniquely qualified to handle like not having first round picks." I got so mad.
He was joking.
Yes, no kidding.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. That's all I wanted to hear. I think he was joking, and people are like, "Oh, this guy's proud." Pride comes before the fall, James. It's like, no, he's just like, listen, fans, it's going to be a crazy ride. We might not have first round picks. You just brought up a different point, though. We used to talk. I forgot about this. We used to talk about the Rams as stars and scrubs, right? It was when they won the Super Bowl. It was Stafford. Cooper Kupp was one of the best receivers of all time that year statistically. Aaron Donald, and then they filled it out with day 2 and Jalen Ramsey, right? But they filled their roster with day 2 and day 3 players. But they had 5 or 6 players that were stars: Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, everybody you're talking about. Is that the pursuit here from Gladstone? Because the Rams have gotten away from that a little bit the last couple of years, right? Because it's cyclical. Is that what he's going to try to create there in Jacksonville? I
wouldn't necessarily say that's the pursuit, like in the same manner that they went about it. But if you look at this Jags team, you have to come away saying that they don't have stars outside of Brian Thomas Jr. They do not. They don't have guys like Josh Allen's a good defensive end. He's not elite. Tyson Campbell's a good cornerback. He's not in the elite tier. They don't have that caliber. And so you get a guy in Travis Hunter who very easily, a lot of people see joining that caliber of player. And it's funny you mentioned, like, you think James Gladstone, that guy sounds like a youth preacher, like youth pastor. Like he knows that pride comes before the fall. Like he's not this. He is not a prideful human being. I can almost guarantee you that. He's very impressive so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was making a joke about, hey, like my life experience for 7 out of my 8 professional years with the Rams, we didn't have a first round pick. Like, don't worry, fans. Like, we're gonna get through this together. That's what I was reading. So, anyway, any drafts you don't love so far? Any teams
that? Question.
Yeah, look, we did this.
I hate it. Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
Bengals draft. The Cincinnati Bengals. I think they. It feels like they just said, we have need here. Draft that position. Draft it. Like it felt very much like best player at a position of need, and not a let's add good players draft. Unfortunately, and that's not to say. These guys are all very athletic. They're all developmentally capable, right? Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight, Dylan Fairchild. It would surprise me if any of them made any sort of impact next year on this roster. Maybe even year 2. It feels like all those picks are a few years away from even making it. And just from a value perspective, I don't think they got any surplus value, and not even surplus value. I think they reached on all of them in terms of where I would have even come close to taking them. So from that perspective, like all that, I did not like the Bengals draft.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as objective as possible around the Shamar Stewart conversation, because he is an incredible athlete and he can be crazy disruptive. And I think if you just tell him, hey, go and try to run through the tackle over and over again, he might win a few reps and set things up for Trey Hendrickson and some of the other guys on the interior. I just don't know if that's what you really want at 17 when maybe there's better all-around football players on the board. So that's part of the question with the Shamar Stewart thing. And we've had this conversation so many times, Trayvon Walker, Tyree Wilson, maybe Rashawn Gary. So if it takes them 2 years to figure it out, or they don't necessarily figure it out, that's a whole rookie contract there that you are paying them, and not getting value.
I think the Vikings as well was a team that and now they came in the draft with 4 picks. And so it was always going to be difficult, but they drafted a guard in the first round, Donovan Jackson, who I just had lower on my board. So like people had him in that range, but it definitely wasn't like, oh, they got to steal at 24. And then when the two teams after you get a haul back of picks, like it's kind of like you wouldn't have gotten Donovan Jackson trading down to 46 like the Rams did, or top of the second round like the Texans did. But you could have used those picks. It would have been nice to have those picks back. And then go in the third round, Ty Felton, which, he's definitely just going to play a speedster role in that offense. But if I'm racking up the speed wide receivers who I'm putting in that sort of role, he's not in my top 3. And the other 3, like at that point in the draft. So I just think he doesn't have like, you have a skinny-ish 2-3 there already. He doesn't bring size to the table whatsoever. So it's I don't know. I didn't love those picks. There's
a lot of sub 4.4 receivers in this draft. A lot of different flavors still available here in rounds 4 and beyond as well. Yeah, that whole sequence: Chargers at 22, Packers at 23, Vikings at 24, and then the Texans at 25. They traded out, and the reports were that the Giants were trying to get up to get Jackson Dart for a while. The Texans finally took the trade. They got 2 extra 3s, one this year and one next year. I thought it was a great move for the Texans. Traded down 9 spots, got Jaden Higgins, who if they took him at 25, I would have said fine, absolutely. So I think the Texans win that interaction for them. Not over the Giants, but like they're winners in that interaction. They're happy with it. If you're the Vikings with only 4 picks this draft, you didn't take that because you're afraid of the guard drop off. I don't know in hindsight if you would do that. And like you mentioned, the Rams haul, they got next year's first round pick, right? That is some patience there. And I feel like that balanced out last year, losing a 2 for Braden Fisk. I really love that for the Rams.
And they got it from the Falcons
Tell me about the Falcons. Yeah. What do you think about the Falcons? Let me real quick, the most fascinating case studies in the draft over the last 2 years. Michael Penix Jr., when they already had Cousins for all that money, and now 2 edge rushers who are top 5 on a lot of edge rush boards in the first round here for the Falcons.
Yeah, I understand what they're doing. And this is, to me, feels a little bit like a GM going to save his job. Because if they go 6-11 this year, Atlanta, Fontenot's out, right? I don't think he keeps his job with another playoff list season. Because it's been like his entire tenure there. I don't think he's made the playoffs, right? So I think he is very much on the hot seat. That's what this move felt like. But people did have James Pierce says some people said top 10 to 12 talent in this draft. So when similar to Dallas Turner last year, if you see him as that special of a guy, the money or the trade value chart starts to move. You gave up a lot, but it starts to get different in terms of and why I say I think it was definitely this year moves, because then they also moved up to the third round, right? Like they moved up to 101. So they want as much as they could get this year, just to say, hey, that number 1 pick next year, we're going to throw it away because we want that. But I will say, when you line up 2 edge guys, Jalen Walker, James Pierce, their rookie contracts with a quarterback, the 2 most valuable positions are in terms of how much they get paid on a football field. The Falcons will not have to spend any money on the next 4 years now. Yep. They are cheap at the positions you want to be cheap at for a stretch. And so if all of them hit, if you really, hit home runs, you all of a sudden are real deal Super Bowl contenders very quickly, very easily with this draft.
And usually if teams trade back in the first to get a guy, it's a guy they would have taken at 15. And a lot of people had Jalen Walker going top 10. I don't know if they expected Jalen Walker to be there. And so they just, the reason why I also say
Pierce, yeah.
Right. And I think the fascinating case study here is I think Pierce he was more productive in college, but he's got the football character questions. Jalen Walker, pristine character, who's kind of an upside play. Like you're expecting him to still develop as he's more of a full-time edge. So you get those two guys in the same room, playing the same position, and seeing how they develop right next to each other. I love that. Just as as a football fan, I love it. Just it's fun.
And they're athletic. I mean, for Raheem Morris now, they haven't had an edge since John Abraham, right? Like it's been forever.
It's been forever.
That's actually yeah. So and then Xavier Watts, gonna love the Notre Dame guy, but I think he's very instinctive, very heady safety, and he gets to go next to Jesse Bates. So yeah, that would excite me too.
I didn't know that we still had super chats on Larry Bedoin, but I screwed it up again. We just did it last night. $10 for you, Mike. Look at that. Super chats.
Oh.
Thanks, Mike.
When do I get that?
Thank you to Larry. Mike, you're always our favorite. People love when we give when we have a little bit of a reunion. You're my favorite draft analyst. You took my job at PFF.
Thank you.
So
well, technically you never laid claim to the draft analyst title, so you see you blame yourself, Steve, on that one. That was
Larry Bedoin. No, I went to the product side. And I went to a different job, and you opened up the draft analyst thing. You didn't take my job, Mike, but we worked really well together. You're my favorite draft analyst. I always appreciate your takes. Let's wrap it up with this. Any other hot takes that you have, or just good takes on the draft? And I really want to discuss your favorite players going into to day 3 here. Who's still left on the board?
I'm surprised we didn't see any player trades. Truthfully, I thought there were a lot of teams that really should have. I'm looking at the Miami Dolphins and like, what are you doing? Trading up for a guard, and you have you need a guard, but you also need like 6 other positions in this draft. So,
do you like Savanier? Do you like?
I do Jonah? Actually. I like him a lot. I liked him more than. That's why I questioned the Vikings pick, because I liked him more than Donovan Jackson, and I even think for like an outside zone team, he could be even better. I love his mobility, and I love his ability. Like, you just see that tackle and think about what it can be when he kicks inside. So, yeah, I am a big fan of him, but I am not a big fan of the Dolphins and their strategies as of late. But
they had to.
Yeah, that's
I mean, they got beat up in big games against good teams who were more physical than them. It felt like a draft where they're like, we have to get better on both lines of scrimmage. Kenneth Grant, Savanier, even if you're trading up for him, it's like they just felt like they needed to get better through the spine on both sides. And that because they were this like, we're gonna score 70 against the bad defense, high powered fast offense. They needed to get a little bit tougher. That feels like the move that they're trying to make in Miami.
What were your thoughts on Kenneth Grant? Because I know Sam said he was like top 5 guy in his class for him.
He loved Grant. I mean, I think he's good. I thought he's more of I would have loved him to the Chargers at 22. I would have liked him in the 20s. Okay. I think his size, he's not the old school 2-gapping nose tackle. He moves really well, wins with, quick swims and penetrating, but I think he could be disruptive. He's one of those guys you can get more out of, and the production was good, not great. So I liked him more in the 20s than maybe the top 15. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was not really a fan, I'll say. I didn't see the disruptive pass rusher potential that maybe others did. And, I'm trying to think of like the best case scenario. Guys like in his mold who have succeeded, maybe like a Derek Brown is like your best case scenario, but like nose tackles who are higher cut, he's like 6'4", and not laterally agile, or I worry about those guys, or like outlandishly strong, which I just like never saw him being so physically dominant. The ROI for those guys just hasn't been there, in my opinion. So I actually like Tyleek Williams' tape better.
Really? Interesting. Because I think Grant's got more pass rushing chops than Tyleek. He didn't get, he didn't show much at Ohio State. Did he have to? I don't know. But I mean, Tyleek's a better run defender, just pure hold the point, blow up the run game. And if that's what you want, that's fine. So I think Grant has a little bit more 3-down potential, say, than Tyleek. Interesting comparison, though. Someone asked about, I was referencing, Mike, when we were way back at PFF, I was generally the draft guy. And then I moved on to do products at PFF, still was in the media part of PFF, but you were like the official draft guy. So when that was the transition. And then Sam and I officially left PFF after you did, left PFF back in August. We still had some people thinking we worked for PFF and we just have this different brand here.
Oh, because you had the studio.
Yeah, this is 33rd Team. Check the mic. Whole new show. We left PFF. We just had to update that.
How's the new studio coming along?
We're getting in like May 1st. Like we just missed the draft, so they're putting together. Us, we got a desk. We got a whole setup. So it's gonna be sometime this off season. We'll have that thing sorted out. But yeah, it's happened. We just missed it for the draft though, unfortunately.
Excited to see it.
Who are your favorite players here? Who are you looking for on day 3 before I let you go?
Gosh, you know I love David Walker, Central Arkansas, CJ West, the two short D linemen in this draft class, just barely over 6 foot, but like they're short, not small. You know, I think the NFL, one of the biggest traits it overrates in the trenches is like height, because I would much rather have a guy who's 6 foot than a guy who's 6'6" at defensive tackle.
What do you write every time there's a 6'6" defensive tackle? What do you write down in your notes? Struggles with pad level. You know, he plays Javon Kinlaw, Marcus Stroud back in the day, right? They struggle with pad level and they get blown off the ball quite often.
Yeah. So I think those guys, when you watch the tape, they don't get out leveraged. They are very good, very stout, and just can move the line of scrimmage. So I'm big fans of both of them. I love Logan Brown from Kansas. I know he was a 1-year starter, has like a weird profile that like he didn't start until he was like 23 in college. But I watch his tape and I just see craftiness that if I'm like, oh, that's his first year starting, you know, because if he hasn't played like a lot of live football, you're just going to get better. You know, you're just going to get better in year 2, year 3. And I see guys already like fully capable. So
independent hands.
I love his tape.
He tries to mix it up as a pass blocker, and you've got this history now of Kansas tackles converting at the next level. Dominic Pooney. So look at that. Listen to Mike on Logan Brown. He's my favorite. He's one of my favorite developmental tackles here for today for sure.
Kansas tackles, Oregon quarterbacks. Just draft them. They'll be great. I like some of the interior offensive linemen. I don't think Marcus Bowe came off the board, right? Or Miles Frazier. Or am I wrong about that?
Who was the first guy you said? Frazier did not.
Marcus Bowe, the Purdue tackle.
Oh, no, he did not. He was intriguing
to me. I like both those guys.
Yeah.
I think they both can be good guards at the NFL level. I think Frazier, I feel a little bit better about his floor, whereas I think Bowe's ceiling is pretty high, actually, just because he's his tape was such an interesting watch. You know, people gave him Zach Tom comps. I think Tom was a better prospect coming out. I think he was more NFL ready. But Bowe, like, he switches his sets up. His feet are really gifted in terms of his mobility.
Moves really well. Yeah.
He almost like tries to do too much at times, which I prefer. You know, for an offensive lineman, I'd rather they have a little trying to do too many sets and different things with their hands than just setting the same every single time. But I think he's fully capable of developing. So I like those guys. And I love Dylan Sampson, the Tennessee running back. I'm not surprised that he's still available. Only 6 guys came off the board, and he would be, I think, the lightest of any of the running backs that are drafted yet. But I just think he's going to be – I think he's this year's Bucky Irving. I think he's officially it now. They dropped to the 4th round.
He's the Bucky Irving, huh? Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. Well, Mike, I appreciate it. Larry Bedoin, appreciate the shout-out and the super chat. Last question, Mike. Andrew Paul, super chat question here. Could Shedeur Sanders – first, I need a Shedeur Sanders landing spot – could he pull a Lyle Collins and go undrafted? Or could he even say, don't draft me at this point. Now I want to dictate where I'm going. What do we think happens here with Shedeur?
Well, here's the thing. He's still not dictating where he's going. You know, like even if he was a UDFA, he's not just going to pick his landing spot. But it wouldn't surprise me if Jerry Jones and the Cowboys pick him at this point.
Wow.
You know, like it's Jerry. He is going to make waves. He wants it for a lot of people, getting talked about, your backup quarterback getting talked about every week by Skip Bayless, right, and Stephen A. Smith is a bad thing. But for Jerry Jones, that's his goal. So that's one that wouldn't surprise me. Is them. Steelers obviously makes the most sense for a lot of reasons that everyone's talked about. But I just think a lot of teams are just like, why would he's going to be a backup? We don't want to be on First Take every week after my quarterback has a bad game saying, when is Shedeur Sanders going to start? They don't want that. So that's where I'm at.
I love the Jerry Jones. Imagine the QB room of Dak Prescott, Joe Milton, and Shedeur Sanders. Yeah. I mean, he's battling Joe Milton for QB too. It's not a lock over there the way Milton's developing.
That would be electric.
All right, Mike. Always appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find everything you're doing, and what are you doing here on day 3 for CBS?
Yeah, so we're just doing recap content over on CBS Sports' YouTube channel and some on CBS Sports Network and CBS Sports HQ. So check that out. I'm giving my grades. I think if you go in the app, CBS Sports app, that you can see all the grades we're giving out to the picks. But that's all doing on day 3, and then some pods off of it on Pushing the Pile next week.
All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go, and then I'll speak to everybody about what we have going on. So thank you, Mike. Always appreciate it. Fans love you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks to Mike Renner for joining. I just want to wrap it up. We're not going to be live throughout day 3 here, but we're going to be going live as the big news breaks. So as Shedeur Sanders, when and if he gets drafted, we'll have an instant reaction on that. Round 4, we'll definitely recap round 4 and a lot of the big news and the players that get drafted there. And then, we'll go live as the big stuff happens throughout the day. So make sure you're subscribed. And then we're going to go live, full draft recap, 7 o'clock, whenever it ends. We're just going to press the button, go live, recap all 7 rounds. And then the big stuff this weekend, your team's going to get plenty of love. We're going to recap every single team, division by division, starting tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 2 teams per day. So stick with us. Check the mic. Shout out to Mike Renner once again. And we'll see you again. And happy day 3, everybody. See you here throughout the day.